Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today I want to talk about what level you should be in Wizard101. Now this video is mainly designed for people who either want a side quest or people who just kind of want to know what's going to be the minimum level for when I'm going through the game. Now there's a few things to note before I get into this video. First off, I'm going to give recommendations for certain level milestones you should try to hit before certain worlds, and you don't necessarily need to follow those. A big PSA for the beginning of this video: you can get through this entire game and become max level without doing a single piece of side quest or side content, which means realistically you do not have to worry about what level you are. While there are reasons to overlevel, which I will get into in a minute, you don't necessarily need to overlevel. So keep that in mind. Now the second thing I want to talk about is that while I'm talking about levels in this video, I do actually need to divide it into two separate sections. The reason for that is the fact that on PC version of Wizard101, they actually recently buffed the Arc 1 XP, which, while it doesn't seem like it would change a lot, it does change Arc 1 and then most of Arc 2 quite significantly compared to what you would imagine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it into two separate sections. I'm going to talk about the console version and how console is, then I'm going to talk about PC and how PC works. So without further ado, let's get into the video talking about what level you should be in Wizard101. So there is a bare minimum level, and obviously the more side quests you do, the more over leveled you become, which is, in my opinion, anything that's above the minimum. Now you may be asking, Noah, why should I become over leveled? Why should I do these side quests? What I will say is that the biggest reason to become over leveled in Wizard101 is the fact that because gear sets are kind of in level milestones, the earlier you can get to that level milestone to get that gear, the absolute better. So this specifically, in my opinion, goes true for early gear sets like Mount Olympus gear at level 30, Waterworks gear at level 60, and even Castle Darkmoor gear at level 100. The earlier you can get these gear sets, the easier the game will be. This especially goes true for like Waterworks, for example. If you can hit level 60 as early as possible, worlds like Dragonspire and Celestia can become so much easier than if you don't have Waterworks gear. This also goes true with like Zeus gear. If you can manage to get Zeus gear like around early Marleybone instead of in the middle of like Mushu, that is a longer time that you have that gear set, and you can make use of that gear set for many more quests than you would be able to normally. Now obviously this doesn't go true for every gear set, because there are certain gear sets like Dragonspire World gear where you can't actually technically farm it until you get to Dragonspire. You can buy the cheap versions in the bazaar, but certain things like that, or like atavistic gear, you won't be able to farm anyway despite being overleveled, but there are certain gear sets that you can get early. Another reason to be overleveled is actually spells. Obviously you get spells at certain milestones, like you get 7-pip AoEs at level 48, you get the 8-pip spells at level 58, so on and so forth, and being able to get those early, especially the level 48 7-pip AoEs, is going to be a massive benefit to you. If you can become a level 48, again, like mid-early Dragonspire instead of in like Celestia, it's going to be much more of a time that you can actually make use of that 7-pip AoE. So enough talking about reasons to be overleveled, let's get into the actual video itself. So let's start off with the console version of Arc 1, which, as I alluded to earlier, does not have the Arc 1 XP buff. Now what does this mean exactly? Well, on the PC version, the target level is basically for every world is 10 levels higher. So the end of Wizard City is 10, Krakatopia 20, Marleybone 30, and Dragonspire you're supposed to be 50 at the end of it. Well, before they introduced this and how console works, there wasn't really a target level like newer worlds or like the XP buff had. It was just kind of a bare minimum that you could get to, and the target level was something you were supposed to do side quests to get up to. So the bare minimum level, Wizard City is 10, Krakatopia is 20, Marleybone is about 28 or so, Mushu is about 35 to 36, and then finally Dragonspire is level 43 or 44. So you can see, especially once you get to like Dragonspire, you tend to be quite a few levels under where you would want to be. And this, for the longest time, has meant that doing Arc 2, like starting Celestia, was actually much more difficult than you'd want, because doing Celestia at level 43 is much more difficult than doing Celestia at, say, like level 50 plus. So to compensate for this, a lot of people will tend to throw in Wintertusk as a recommendation. Now, on console specifically, I would recommend doing Wintertusk after Dragonspire. So you'll be around level 43 finishing Dragonspire at the bare minimum, and if you start Wintertusk, you should be at least least level 50 before entering Celestia. Now, the recommended levels, I would recommend trying to do some side quests, and if you can, you will be able to get quite a bit higher. So if you do a lot of side quests in Wizard City, you can end at 15. Crocotopia, I'd say 25 is a good level to shoot for, because then midway through Marleybone, you'll hit level 30 and be able to go get Zeus gear. For Marleybone, I would try to finish at least like around level 35. If you can't hit 35, then early 30s is fine. Mushu, if you can hit the 40 range, that would be great. And then Dragonspire, if you can hit 48 before doing Winter Tusk, that will help you a lot. And the goal is, if you can hit around level 58 plus after doing Winter Tusk, you will be in very good shape to do Celestia and be able to get the Waterworks gear much earlier than people normally would be able to. If you didn't do any side quests at all, you can actually, I'm pretty sure, finish Celestia without hitting level 60 on console, which means that you won't even be able to get Waterworks gear until you're in Zafaria. It's either that or you will hit level 60 at like the very end of Celestia. So do keep that in mind. That's how it used to be on PC, and it's actually quite a bit different for console than PC. That's what I'd recommend. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here again so that you can see it, but that's my recommendation for the console and what level you should be. All right, now let's talk about PC, which is quite a bit of a big difference. Now, obviously, you have the Arc 1 XP buff. What this means is that you should, at base, doing no side quests at all, hit level 50 by the end of Dragonspire, which is massive because it means you can hit level 60 significantly earlier than you would have normally been able to before the update and how console works. Now, to give an example of this, if you guys were watching my Death Let's Play, which rest in peace to Death Let's Play, obviously it was canceled, but just doing it, I was level 49 when I finished and was about to hit level 50 in Mushu. So that would have meant level 50 Mushu, I would have been able to get Dragonspire World Gear at the very least in the Bazaar and use that in Mushu, which is massive. I would have been able to get like 100 damage in Mushu. I can't stress that enough. And I hadn't even done Winter Tusk yet. So if I threw in Winter Tusk in that, I would definitely have been able to hit level 60 before finishing Dragonspire and potentially before even starting Dragonspire. So for PC, honestly, you can get away with doing next to no side quests. You can just quest through the game normally. However, if you do a lot of side quests, what I'd recommend is if you can hit level 60, definitely by the end of Dragonspire, but if you can even hit it before entering Dragonspire, that will be absolutely nuts, because getting Waterworks gear before doing Celestia will be amazing. Getting it before doing Dragonspire is going to just be broken. Basically, any school with Waterworks gear will probably be able to 4-pip AoE all of Dragonspire and have absolutely no issues. So that is basically the main difference between PC and console. And one thing I'd like to reiterate, I would recommend doing Winter Tusk after Mushu on PC, and on console, I'd recommend doing it after Dragonspire. The main reason is I tend to like doing Winter Tusk around level 40, and that's around when you hit level 40 on both respective platforms. It's really up to you. You can actually technically do it earlier because they did remove the level lock on Winter Tusk. However, again, I'll leave that up to you. All right, now let's get into the further arcs, which will be basically the same for PC and console. PC, you'll probably be slightly higher level, but either way, what I'd recommend is around the same, because the amount of XP it takes to level up increases massively, especially towards the end of Arc 2. Doing side quests gets to be less and less valuable, and this is especially true anything like post Arc 2 and Arc 3. The only thing I'd really recommend is if you do side quest and you can manage to hit like say 95 before Chrysalis, so you end up hitting 100 like mid to early Chrysalis, that will be very useful for you. Getting the Castle Darkmoor gear, the Malastare gear that much earlier will make Chrysalis Part 2 much better than if you didn't have it at all. Before, back in the day, you used to hit level 100 towards the end of Chrysalis. If you can hit it before Chrysalis, even better, but if you can hit it even early to mid Chrysalis, that will be much better for you. Now, from here on, honestly, what level you should be does not really matter, especially later on. All of the gear sets are farmed from the final world bosses anyway, so being over leveled doesn't really do anything for you, because you can't really get to the gear sets unless you transfer it to a wizard. Fine, but in most instances, being over leveled isn't even really going to help you past like level 100, 130 maybe if you do the catacombs and dragoon gear. Basically not very helpful whatsoever. However, one thing that I will note is that you will just naturally end up being massively over leveled and probably end up reaching max like 2 to 3 worlds earlier than you should. Now you may be asking like, Noah, why is that the case? Well, basically basically what KingsIsle did was at level 130, they changed the experience so that instead of needing 2.5 million to level up, you only need 1.25 million to level up. What this meant is that anyone who was already over leveled, once they reached that point, were still receiving the massive XP gains that they would have gotten at that world. But since they needed less to level up, they managed to get massively over leveled. Around the end of Mirage to early Imperia, you start leveling up massively and getting super over leveled because of how little XP it takes to level up. I don't know why they didn't adjust for this. I don't know why they didn't change the XP gains in those worlds, but it does mean, especially if you've done a lot of side quests up until that point, you are going to end up reaching max level many worlds early. I hear some cases of people reaching like level 180 in the Caramel to Lemuria range. One thing I'd just like to mention real quick, this is a mini side rant, so I guess if you don't want to hear this, you can skip it. But I've heard a few instances of people telling me in my comments, they're like, Noah, I'm max level, I reached max level early, and I'm not going to quest until the next world comes out. I hit like level 180 in like Novus, so I don't feel like questing anymore. Please don't do that. In this game, there will never not be a reason to keep questing to the end of the game and to catch up with everyone, because KingsIsle is never going to increase the level cap more than 10 at a time, which means that when you're questing that max level through those 3 worlds, you're not missing out on XP. It should make sense to all of you. If you have a logical train of thought, you should be able to think of that. But I have had multiple people go into my comments and be like, Noah, I'm not going to quest until the new world comes out because I'm max level. But like, no. That's not how it works. You're never going to be a higher level than the max level because they're never going to increase the level cap by more than 10. So I don't know. I digress. I just figured I'd mention that because I figured it's worth talking about. If you do reach level 180 early, don't stop questing. Just keep questing and get to the final quest in the game. It's the way to go. No, otherwise, I think that that's pretty much it for this video. That's pretty much hands down really all you need to know, because Arc 1 and Arc 2 is where this is mainly applicable. Anything post Arc 3, it's not. Just because gear sets, you can't farm them really anyways until you're at that final boss, which means being over leveled isn't very helpful anyways. On top of that, a lot of spells around then are also locked behind quests and not necessarily just the level. So like the Wallaroo AoE, for example, which would be super useful to get, I don't even think you can get early until you unlock Wallaroo. So even if you hit like the level 160 range, you're not going to be able to get the Wallaroo AoE in like, for example, Lemuria or earlier, because you're not able to actually do the quest anyway. So I think that's pretty much it for today. If you found this useful, if you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like at the sub button. I know it's not like the most riveting video I've ever made, but I thought it was interesting to look at what level you should be. And I'm sure that, you know, there are some console players who want to know what exactly should I do and what level should I be in this game. So thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.